Alright, hello everyone and welcome to my Let's Play of Angband. The first thing I should say right off the bat is this first video is going to be kind of an introduction to what Angband is, what the roguelike genre in general is. It will go into character creation and how to do that, and then it'll start by showing some of the basic key commands and stuff to give you a foot in the game. So if you're just interested in watching Angband played, you'll want to go to the next video and they'll throw an annotation link there. This video is for people who want to play Angband themselves and kind of want a primer in how it goes. I'll also put links in the not links, times in the description you can click on to get to specific parts of this video. So first off, the general introduction. Angband's a game I really enjoy. I actually have done a bit of a Let's Play under a different YouTube account. I'll link that here. I'm redoing it. It's been a couple of years, and the technology I'm recording with has gotten better. I'm now using XSplit, so I'm not limited to 10-minute video sections. The game itself has gone through some changes. We're on version 3.3.2, and I've picked up a few more good habits that it would be worthwhile to teach people when I play. So if you want to play Angband, it's free. That's the good news. We're gonna go quick pop up XSplit and go to my full screen. Go here to rephial.org, rephial.org, and just click the button that's correct. Also make sure you look at the version here. This is 3.3.2. There is also a Angband version 3.4 in a bit of development, and there's also a version 4.0 that is sort of their experimental thing. They're trying new stuff for the genre in. So if the build you get online is not 3.3.2, like obviously not now, but if you're watching this video a year from now or something, there might be some significant changes, and make sure you read the patch notes. For now, I think all the new projects in the Angband world it's probably going to be some time before they see any fruition. So for the next couple months anyway, it's a pretty safe bet you'll still be playing 3.3.2. And just make sure you check there. So we're going to go back to Angband here. And so Angband is a roguelike. Roguelikes are a favorite genre of mine. I love them to death. The two big things that constitute a roguelike are games that have permanent death, which means if you die, your save file's deleted, it's gone, and you have to start a new character, and randomly generated levels, so that sometimes there are some parts that are the same, like in Ancient Domains of Mystery, there are random dungeons and non-random overworld, but the key is that you can't brute force memorize the game. And you can't mindlessly grind and just reload a save if you die. And those two things combined mean that the game has consequence in a way that most modern games don't have anymore. Most modern games, it's like, oh, I died, I gotta, play 10 minutes over again. And there's a tension when you play roguelikes about not losing your character that it's just not represented enough in the gaming world. I find in general, there aren't enough times in the world where you've got objective feedback on what you do, where like if you screw something up you get instant, no, you screwed that up, that was bad. But in a roguelike it's like, oh, you made a mistake, your character's dead, start a new character, don't be so bad this time. And that, I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't like that, but I really enjoy a game that's so purely about self-improvement. Angband could best be described as the grindiest of the roguelikes, which is funny because generally, like in a JRPG or something, I really detest grind. Like, I detest just sitting and level up till you win. And Angband is probably the most level up-y of the major roguelikes. But because there's that element of tension, because there's that element that death is always present, I still enjoy it. And I hope you guys will too. It's got a lot of history behind it, as you can see. Copyright 1985 from Moria, which is the game it's based on. And it's a game with a lot of history, but it's still going through changes, which is one nice thing, is there are games like the original Rogue. It can be fun to play for the nostalgia value, because it obviously formed a generation of roguelikes, hence roguelikes, but it hasn't, it's too old now. But Angband is still being developed today, and that's a really appealing feature of it. So, I think with that preamble, we're going to go into character creation. There is an open, if you have you can save and quit, obviously. Like, there's permanent death when you die. You are still allowed to save and quit and reload later. It's just that save file is deleted when they die. You can load a file of a character who died, and then it'll start with the same starting stats, so you don't need to pick them again. And as kind of a fun trivia, it will say in your monster history the all the ones your ancestors have killed. Like it might say your ancestors have slain 10 blue dragons or something like that. We're gonna go ahead and start a new character, and and Angband is going to. I think it's because I've been resizing the window in preparation for this cast. So we're gonna exit it, and I have no idea what the stream is gonna show right now. And we're gonna try again. Okay. You on Angband this time? Yeah, I think it's still good. Okay, there we go. There we go. Sex doesn't have any gameplay things. Let's say male. You pick your race. Going through the stats. Anyone who's played Dungeons and Dragons knows Strength, Int, Wiz, Dex, Con, Charisma. If you haven't, Strength is how much you can carry, how strong you are. Damage with most melee weapons. Dexterity also will increase damage, especially for lighter weapons. Influences your dodging. Int and Wisdom are the spellcasting one. Intelligence is for mages, and Wisdom is for cleric types. Constitution is your general health, and Charisma. I'm not entirely sure what the role of Charisma is. I assume better rates at the shops. Beyond that, I don't actually know too much. You can see the different races. Some of the interesting things about races are, for example, your XP modifier is a big one. So you notice humans are like the vanilla plain normal race, and their XP mod's 100%. And we go to, say, high elves, they have 200%. What that means is it takes a high elf twice as long to level up as a human. They need twice as much experience. But they also have really, really strong stats. Only a -1 to wisdom, +1, +3, +3, +1, +5. And they have some better things in general. The hit die is it's a modifier. The bigger it is, the more health you get when you level up. It's also influenced by your con, what you get when you level up. And then a lot of races have an intrinsic, like you see here, half-elves sustain dexterity. And what that means is there are many effects in the game that can drain all of your stats, but a half-elf will never have their dexterity drained. Their dexterity is protected permanently, can never ever be lowered. Elves also have resist light damage and sustain dex. Hobbits sustain experience, which is more useful than it sounds. There are things that will drain your life away. So sustaining experience means that you don't lose those levels. It's especially useful because the main way to get rid of stat drain in this game is to level up. If you're an Angband veteran, it used to be a much more brutal system where you'd have to drink a specific potion to cure the drain. And now you just need to level up, but if your experience points get drained, then you need to drink a potion, because leveling up is going to be a lot more difficult. So that's really cool. And identify as mushrooms. A big key of the Angband dynamic is when you find items, you don't know what they are until you eat or drink them or get them identified. So getting to have mushrooms identified just when you pick them up is really cool. Gnomes have resist paralysis, which is probably the most useful intrinsic out of all of these. Paralysis oftentimes is just, if something paralyzes you, a lot of times they'll just keep re-paralyzing you. So if you're paralyzed, you just die. You lose your character for free. That's it. Good game. So the gnome resist paralysis is a very, very useful feature. As anyone but a gnome, you need to rush for what's called an item of free action that gives you this gnome intrinsic. And they get identified magic devices the same way hobbits ID mushrooms. Dwarves can't be blinded, and they sense ore in the walls. It's not too useful. If you need the money, it can be useful to tunnel it, but half-orcs resist darkness damage. Trolls have good health regen and sustained strength. Dunedain sustained con. High elves see invisible, which is really neat, and they resist light. Kobolds resist poison. So, going into all these, we're going to play a dwarf. Nice, archetypal dwarfy dwarf. They've got bonuses to strength, wind, and constitution, so they're very tanky. Penalties to dexterity, charisma, and intelligence. Don't want to be a wizard. Their XP mod's 120, so they won't level up that slowly. They get some nice benefits to their saving throw, which is really cool. That's something, we'll try to do something bad to you, but you get to make a saving throw to avoid the bad thing. So having a good saving throw is really useful. And that resists blindness and sensing ore. So we'll play a dwarf. You got all the classes you can pick. Warriors, standard, hit them with your thing. As a new player, warrior is really useful, although you will find you might hit a ceiling, because when you think about it, because playing a warrior, they mostly just attack by ramming into stuff. The biggest decisions you make as warriors are about the items you buy, which items you equip. Every character cares about that to some degree, but for a warrior, it's like the core of what they are. And so until you master those systems, it's hard to advance as a warrior. But the beginning of the game is very, very easy. Conversely, mages have a very, very tough early game. You can get splatted very quickly. You only start with the ability to cast 3 magic missiles and you have to sleep. So if all 3 of them miss or fail or whatever, you might die. But it's a little easier to progress because leveling up means a lot to a mage because you get all these new spells you can cast. You do need to find the spell books, but the key of it is that leveling up helps them more, whereas for warriors, gearing up is their main form of progression. So you have to be careful about that. Priests have divine magic, kind of like the mages have arcane, but theirs keys off of wisdom instead of intelligence. And they can use that. They do all right with blunt or blessed weapons. Rogues learn a little bit of arcane, but not much. But they're very good at stealth and backstabbing, which does a lot of damage to sleeping creatures. Rangers, like rogues, get arcane, but only a little, and extra shots with their bows. And paladins are like priests light, but then they're better. So they're kind of halfway between warrior and priest. We're going to play a priest. I want to get into spellcasting with this character. And the advanced spellcasting. And still uses weapons, so hopefully it'll be a good blend. Do point-based. Standard roller is there for nostalgia value, essentially, where the original Dungeons & Dragons games, and this is basically a mashup of Moria, Dungeons & Dragons, and then it takes Lord of the Rings theme, like it was in Moria. So, just as fun trivia, Angband is heavily Lord of the Rings themed. In fact, Angband is one of the orc fortresses, I believe, in Lord of the Rings. So, don't do roller. Do point-based. So, it starts by putting your points in these weird default places. Generally, I like to take it out even for the stats I want to increase, just so I can see. It's 24. So you can watch the wisdom. That's the main casting stat, one of as high as we can get. Notice how 1 to 6 is linear, and you gotta go 8, 12 to get it to its highest, 18/50. The slash system is weird. It's essentially because 18 is the highest base stat in Dungeons & Dragons, and then it goes to this slash, and then there's a big number after it that goes up by tens. It's kind of weird, the specifics of it. Just it's a high number. It's better. Let's just stick with that, and it goes plus 10 for every additional point. We want some strength, and we want some constitution. Why don't we put 6 points in each so we don't hit that non-linear part where it costs 2 points to go up a rank. So we'll spec them like this. You can see some of the other stats. 46% saving throw, not stealthy, not good perception, but decent at fighting. And a lot of these other stats we'll kind of just get into as we find items that influence them. And we're going to call our guy Finnegan. How does you spell Finnegan? Let's just call him Finn. I know there might be a Finnegan in real life. So like, dude, that's not how I spell it. So here's Finn, like in Adventure Time. So there we go. The town of the game, there are always these 8 buildings. The arrangement of them is random, but it doesn't actually matter where they are. So that's just for variety. The general store is where you get stuff like food, you get torches, and you get scrolls of Word of Recall, which are really important to Angband. Basically, when you read a scroll of Word of Recall, you either recall to the town or to where you were in the dungeon when you read your last Word of Recall. So it lets you bounce back and forth between the levels very easily. And otherwise, it would be really hard to sell stuff when you got past like the 10th floor, because you have to run up 10 floors and sell it and run back down 10. The goal of the game is to get to the bottom, the 100th floor. Morgoth, the final boss, is there. I've never gotten there myself. I'll confess right now I have not won a game of Angband, but I've gotten pretty far. We'll go to the armory here. That's where you get armor. And the weaponsmith, I'll leave to your imagination. Temple is a good place for priests like me. You get the spell books, and there's a lot of beneficial potions and beneficial scrolls there. The alchemy shop is kind of like the temple, but it's more focused on potions and such, and it doesn't have the spell books, and it doesn't really have the scroll. Well, it's got scrolls too, not the same ones. Magic Shop has a lot of stuff like magic wands, magic rods, spell books for mages. Pretty good catch-all for magical miscellany. The black market is interesting. They will buy almost anything off of you, but for worse rates than the dedicated stores. So if I have a book of magic, the magic shop will give me a pretty good price for it. The blacksmith will screw me, but at least they'll take it if, say, the magic shop is full. And they sell this completely random array of stuff. You'll get good loot for the black market, but it's way overpriced. So you don't want stuff there that you'd find in any of these other shops. But a lot of times they'll have good stuff you would not find anywhere else, and they'll charge you out the ass, but like, you kind of need it. So, and then your home is just a place you can leave stuff and it won't get harmed, it won't get stolen. So, for example, there are monsters that can breathe fire and light your scrolls on fire. So if I've bought, let's say, 10 scrolls of Word of Recall, because I really want to be able to recall, maybe I'll leave 4 of them at home, so if a monster burns all but 1, I can read that 1, go here, and then I'll still have some scrolls of Recall to my name. So, those are the buildings in the town. We'll get to know them a lot better as we play. And I'm going to go to some of the important hotkeys right now. First off, the big one you should know, the Enter key brings up this command menu. And the command menu is very useful for new players, because say I say items, it's got all the things to wear and wield an item, examine it, to use the different kinds to eat food. You don't want to rely on this command menu. It's very tedious to use it. You want to just hit the key after, like, it says using a staff is U. You want to hit U to use staves. You don't want to hit enter every time. But, as a resource for newbies, it's invaluable. As for inscribing, inscribing is basically just if you want to put a note to yourself on the item. Like, if you've got armor and you're saving it for later, you can say, like, saving for later, something like that. It's not as relevant now. It's relevant because in the old days, to identify stuff, you kind of had to, the game would not officially confirm. Whereas now in Angband, like, if you wield an item and it gives you a +5 bonus, the game will say, because you could have seen that you went up by 5, we'll just tell you it's +5. So inscribing, it's got some uses, but mostly I think it's just there for nostalgia. Angband vets are free to correct me if I'm wrong and say what things they tend to inscribe for. Action commands, stuff you can do. I'm not going to sit and go through all these slowly. I'm just kind of pointing out where these lists are and what will be on each one of them. And then information about things and things like saving. So starting out, hitting enter is a great way if you're just trying to figure out, I want to do this, how do I do that? Another good thing is to hit question mark and you get to this nice readme thing. And the biggest thing you care about is F. So when you hit F here, it'll have this very detailed listing about what the commands do. So, say you see that there's the tunnel command in your command menu, and you're like, what is tunneling all about? And this will tell you, like, the different kind of rocks and how easy it is to tunnel, what abilities it increases with. So that's really cool. Another helpful thing is to hit tilde, which at least on a normal American keyboard is just the button to the left of 1, and you gotta hit shift. And when you hit tilde, there are 2 really useful things. One is the monster knowledge, but we haven't seen any monsters yet, so we'll get to that when we see a monster. And the other one is the object knowledge. Well, actually, all 4 of these, ego, item, and artifact, because they'll tell you, like, cure serious wounds potions. We have one of those, so it'll tell you it would heal 40 hit points. And we have that knowledge because we start with 2 of them. We could also hit capital I to inspect. That's a very, very useful command. And we get the same thing. Well, except I said the word of recall because I'm an idiot. C. We get the same thing. But it's nice to have one even for items like you're looking at in the shop or whatever. And then there's also the Hall of Fame if you want to see the high scoreboard. And the character history. As we do stuff, this will fill up with events in our exciting life. So, to start the game, you'll remember... Actually, I'm going to go to one more important command. If you hit caret, which is Shift 6 on the US keyboard, it gives you the control, and 2 things are good are control caret P, which tells you all the messages you've read, and caret F, which gives you level feelings, which we'll get into as soon as we get into the dungeon. And here it says I can learn 2 more prayers. So, to learn a prayer, I could tell you what it is. I already know, but just to show you the kind of thought process you should go through as you're playing the game, I'll hit enter, and I'm going to say, I want to learn a prayer. That sounds like an action. Do you have anything about learning prayers in here? They don't. Maybe it's an item. Because we want to use an item? Oh. Maybe it's information? Aha, information. So it's information for the spells. I was kind of hoping it would be a more intuitive one. I shouldn't have picked one that's in kind of a weird spot, but to show what it's like to search through the menus. And here we see gain new spells as capital G. We could hit enter here and do it. I really want to encourage you guys to get in the habit of just using this as a reference and saying it's capital G, Xing out and hitting capital G ourselves. We study which book? Well, we only have the one. We've learned the care of pre-art wounds. You may be like, why didn't I get to pick? Priests don't get to pick which spell they learn. Arcane casters do, divine casters cannot, I guess because it's stuff from their god. You can hit B to browse and see all of the possible spells you could have learned. And with that, we can hit I to look at our inventory. We see we've got some food and some torches. We've got one recall scroll. We've got 2 potions of cure serious wounds in our spellbook. We hit E to look at our equipment. We've got a mace and a torch already in our hands. And I think that's about everything. There's obviously a lot to explain when we get into the dungeon, but hopefully by combining this and the question mark F, you can quickly figure out kind of what the commands are so that you don't feel worried or anything as you need to start hitting buttons. Although some of the weird niche commands, I'll admit even I haven't memorized all the uses of them. But hopefully at least the common ones you can get down fairly quickly. And I think now I'm going to go down into the dungeon and start the next video of the actual gameplay.